Why modern video games suck. This is my take on why modern video games are not as good as video games used to be. And unlike a lot of these videos, I'm going to give you my 5 points up front and then we'll talk about them. Well, first, I think games are no longer designed to be fun. What I mean is, games you used to have to think of a game like Halo or the early Call of Duty games. The way that they made money is they were 50 or 60 bucks when they came out. And they had to be good enough that they got good reviews. They were a lot of fun to play. And then people would go out and buy them and they'd tell their friends, and then their friends would go out and buy them. And everybody was like, this game is so much fun that you want to go play it. That is how they made their money. That is no longer how games make their money. Not really. It's not the same deal anymore. It's no longer about how much money they make is based on how fun it is. They are based on how many microtransactions and these other back-end systems, or if it's on Game Pass or not, or if it helps a certain company sell more systems or all of those kind of things. And so it's more like games as services. Like if you think about a game like Destiny, it's not about how many individual copies it sold. Again, Bungie made both Destiny and Halo, right? Well, when Halo 1 came out, I don't know, it sold like 10 or 20 million copies, which was like one of the biggest sort of launches ever. Whereas Destiny, it sold a bunch of copies, but then it also sold expansion passes. It also sells in-game content and, costumes. And again, we get into those later. But the thing is that fundamental difference of how companies get paid meant that the games used to have to be fun to make money. Now they just have to have microtransactions and other basically income streams to make money. And those things may or may not be fun, right? Whereas a company like Nintendo is still making games based on whether or not they're fun, because they rely a lot less on live services and microtransactions and all of that. And so when previously the sort of direction a game company would take is, we need to make the funnest, most exciting game possible so that people buy it, that becomes one thing. Versus now it's, we need to make a game that's so addictive that people can't stop playing it, and thus they'll keep buying microtransactions and things like that. It's a different incentive structure. It's a wildly different reason to kind of like design a game. So in some cases, like for example, the early Assassin's Creed games were designed to, simulate assassinating people and going on adventures and having a mysterious story, right? But now in the more recent Assassin's Creed games, they've added more RPG elements, but then they've made the level grind so slow that you go, if you value your time, maybe pay us an extra 10 or 20 bucks so that the level grind is not so bad. Basically, pay us more money and we'll make it more fun. Well, that's a weird incentive, because before, games had to be designed to be fun, whether you paid extra money or not. And even going back to the arcades, when people had to put like a quarter in to play the game again, the game had to be so fun in such a short period of time that you would want to put another quarter in so that you could play it again. Whereas again, now it's kind of less that. I mean, companies will give away a game for free, knowing that you'll buy battle passes and microtransactions to some extent, whether it's fun or not. So the basic kind of reason or design decisions or incentive structure behind making games has shifted away from something aligned with fun to something that's more aligned with addiction and so on and so forth, which leads to point 2, over-reliance on addiction mechanisms. Modern games are basically designed to psychologically keep you playing. This goes back to like Farmville, where, a game like Farmville is designed to give you, or Candy Crush, or a bunch of these that are designed to give you these pops of dopamine and keep you addicted and keep you going so that you play another round, or you do another thing, or you do the little microtransaction or whatever. But it's less about, is that fun? Is the moment-to-moment thing fun? Or are they playing on some other psychological mechanism that makes you feel compelled to play, even if you're not like having as much fun playing the game? It's kind of like, I don't know, turning gamers into like cigarette smokers or some other kind of addiction kind of thing. And yes, video games have always had certain addictive qualities. Certainly, video game addiction is a real thing. But the thing is now casual games have become so focused on addiction, or so focused on giving you little drops of, I don't know, jewels or coins or made up points or whatever, that keeps you playing or gives you a little bit of a progress bar or whatever. And so that becomes something where, again, it's not, is the game really good? Is the game really fun? It's, how many hours can we force these people to play? How much attention out of their lives can we suck? And so again, games become a certain kind of repetitive, or you have things like daily quests. Video games didn't used to have daily quests or weekly quests or anything like that. They used to just be games. And so, that kind of thing, like games sort of turned into jobs or turned into these little addiction things. So like that's not great. And again, older games were different. Older games were not just 100% relied onto the fact that if you don't play today, we're not going to give you those bonus achievement points or those bonus things to get you that next free loot box or whatever. So that's different. Again, just think back to the difference between the Nintendo or Super Nintendo or PlayStation era. Pretty much everything pre-internet connectivity or social media, or pre-iPhone in a ways. Think about how games were designed then versus everything that happened once Facebook, Farmville, iPhone, all of that kind of thing happened. Fortnite, all of that. So, okay, thing 3, why modern video games suck is, again, since games are no longer primarily designed to be fun, and they're very much designed to be addiction machines, think like live services and such. You have some games do loot boxes, some games do microtransactions, some games do battle passes, some do a combination of the three. All of these are designed to, again, get you addicted, give you those dopamine hits and all of that. But they're also, again, very much different revenue streams, so it keeps the accountants happy. This is a big problem if you're a gamer because, again, there are design decisions that could make a game more fun or enjoyable moment to moment or day to day, but then they make less money. Again, think like the Assassin's Creed, I forget which one it sort of started with, but I started hearing about it a few years ago where it was like, oh, you have this big RPG like grind, but you can get an EXP bonus or faster levels, or unlock whatever if you just pay them more money. So it's kind of like you can have the crappy version of the game, but for an extra $20, you can have like the really exciting, faster version of the game that plays like the way we used to do it. Now, they could absolutely give you the fun version of the game. They know what the fun version of the game is. They figured out that it's more profitable to make you pay extra for the fun version of the game. It's a business choice. And some of it was accidental. Like I heard stories that I think it was Halo 5 was the first game that had basically loot box microtransaction packs or whatever they called them. And they'd give you little bonuses and missions and stuff. And it was cool. And it didn't even seem that bad, but I think Microsoft made so much money from that they went, wait a second, this completely changes the cost benefit design of the game. But then they went and made Halo Infinite and it kind of sucked. There's a lot of reasons it kind of sucked, but fundamentally, if you're thinking about this game has to get, if you're thinking, I need to give 10 million people, which is probably like the Halo audience, right? So it's like 10 million people. I need to make a game that's going to make 10 or 20 million people so happy, so much fun that they're going to love it. They're going to tell their friends about it. They're going to shell out $60 for it. They're going to go buy the new Xbox for it. It's a must-have thing. Well, you go, and that's their path to $500 million or $1 billion or whatever a Halo game makes. That's different than saying, well, the game could have 3 to 5 million players, but they're all addicts and they're going to buy a bunch of these microtransaction packs and we'll make actually more money from that than we would from, the old way. So then all of a sudden the single player story doesn't have to be as good. You don't have to tell your friends about it. They're not worried about it because they know the people who are playing are doing so many microtransactions or so many loot boxes, or maybe they're buying the season passes or battle passes or whatever else, that they're like, this game's going to make 3 times as much from the same audience. So we don't care if it goes viral. We don't care if the people who traditionally liked Halo like it anymore. We just need the people who buy the microtransactions. Again, that's not great if you want games designed for your benefit as a player, as opposed to the business's benefit from just a revenue standpoint. So, that major shift of the revenue coming from selling the game because it's fun enough that it's worth buying versus a game being basically a service that you sign up for and you have to keep paying them forever to play it, that changes so much. And even years ago, I remember Valve talking about this. I think Gabe Newell gave a talk about, maybe it was Dota 2, or maybe it was actually back to, Team Fortress 2, that they figured out that they end up making 2 to 3 times as much money by having a free-to-play game with microtransactions, because while each player pays less, in aggregate, you get more paying customers. And so it's kind of like if there were, 10 million people that would buy Halo at $50. So that's like $500 million. But then maybe there's 100 million people that would buy Halo at like $20 or would end up paying $20 for a free-to-play Halo game or something over time. Not like instantly, but they'll buy $20 worth of virtual Halo junk. But maybe there's 100 million people who do that. Well, that's actually like, $2 billion or something. So that's actually way more money because there's more people, even if they're paying a smaller amount. So, I get why a business would do that. But then there's also the problem of there's only so many loot box microtransaction battle passes that people can buy into. It's kind of like you can have 1 or 2 Netflix type company subscriptions, but you can't have 100. But if you think about if every game comes with a battle pass, not every game is Fortnite. Fortnite can do the battle pass thing. Call of Duty can do a battle pass thing. Xbox can have a game pass thing. There's a lot of those kind of things that you could have, but not everyone can. And so it's a winner take all. There's going to be a few big players, and then like everyone else wishes they were the few big players, right? So a lot of these things seem really great, but they're really great for the biggest player and that like the biggest game. Way less good for every other game, which then kind of leads to number 4. And this is obviously kind of wrecked Microsoft recently, from what I can tell, is giant budgets make a massive break-even point for a game. So you're talking about like, if you have a game with a $200, $300, $500 million budget, the amount of units they have to sell is crazy, even at 50 or 60 or $70, right? So you end up with games being more expensive, but they're so much more risky because the amount of content, the amount of high fidelity, virtual everything is so much higher than it used to be. I mean, just think about the amount of work, even with really great tools like Unreal Engine or something. Just think of the amount of artists and work and people involved in making a giant, 10 to 100 hour cinematic adventure of any sort with high resolution 4K graphics and all of that. And just the budgets for creating that world, right? And then think how many units are you going to have to sell to recoup that? It becomes a bigger and bigger thing, and like when Microsoft went on a spender bender and, bought like Activision Blizzard and, the other big ones that had, ZeniMax, I think it was, or whatever, but they bought all of these huge companies. And they've got like $80 billion tied up in game company acquisitions. That's amazing, but it's also terrifying because they need to make, more than $80 billion back over the next 5 to 10 years or something like that. Like, I don't know what Microsoft's sort of internal company corporate ROI on those kind of things tends to be, but like they have somewhere a spreadsheet, I promise you, with the like purchase price and how many years they sort of like amortize that over. and they're expecting to get so much back for that, which means you have probably fewer games that have to make many billions of dollars because, I mean, just think of it this way. If you have an $80 billion revenue hole, you have to kind of like fill back in. And I say, hey, I've got this really profitable game. It'll only cost you $1 million, but it'll make you $10 million back. They'll be like, cool. I mean, that is like, $9 million profit. That's amazing. I mean, that's really great. We need like 9 billion because, you got to have a lot of, if you have games making $10 million profit, which is amazing, and probably a lot of games don't ever make that, but you'd have to have like thousands of those, which you wouldn't have, but you have to have just an obnoxious quantity because they have put so much money up. But that's what I'm saying, like these giant budgets, these massive break-even points, is that a small game that is just focused to be fun is, even if it's profitable, isn't that interesting if you're talking about something that has to move billions of dollars on a balance sheet somewhere. So that becomes, just the cost explosion of all of this has just gotten out of control, and it's like an arms race that's basically unwinnable. This is also why you hear about companies getting so excited about AI, is they go like, well, AI is probably going to be cheaper than people, and people are the ones making these giant, virtual worlds for us that we're selling, subscriptions and battle passes and loot boxes and all that stuff for. So yeah, like that becomes basically an unwinnable place. And so little games, which can be profitable and can be interesting and can be fun, are mostly uninteresting if you're a giant company. And then I'll get to this last point, woke politics and or the message. Now, side note, I don't care about politics. I just don't. It's not what I'm talking about. But what I am saying is, the message, if you've ever watched The Critical Drinker, who's pretty hilarious, this is his kind of like code word, the message, for all things woke politics and modern, stuff where they're putting, essentially like forced diversity or, all that stuff. Here's the thing. I think most gamers don't care. Really and truly, I don't think most gamers are worried about male versus female protagonists, that kind of thing, or whatever. But the problem is that they care about their games being fun. They care about cool stories being told. They care about it being something that is worth their time and their money. They want a good game. They want a good story. They want to have fun. Is that so much to ask? The problem is that the politics internal to companies in the years 2024 are, especially in creative work, is very much about ESG and DEI and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to say that when that stuff starts invading the art, people go, wait a second, I just wanted to play a game. I wanted to escape from all of that. I have to hear about that all day at work, whether I like it or not. So just let me play a game that's fun. And when companies go, hey, we're going to make the most diverse game ever or whatever, that's fine. But they're not asking, is this fun? They're saying, is this check all of the boxes? Is this going to look good on our presentation? Is this going to help our ESG score? Whatever, right? Like all of those kind of metrics. And so because it becomes this sort of performative social act to impress other people with how, modern and diverse and inclusive we are, as opposed to impressing customers who are paying you money to play a game, then again, the incentives are out of whack. My point being that games like Halo, games, like Tomb Raider, just traditional franchises, for the most part, have turned into something that is, even Assassin's Creed recently, right? Like these things have turned into where they're not saying, hey, we're trying to please our customers. They're trying to say, hey, we're trying to please something else, whether it's internal politics, maybe it's a way to get, more budget for games. I don't know what it is, but fundamentally it's kind of user hostile or gamer hostile to the experience. And all of this at the end of the day, it just means that video games are less fun. I don't care about the politics of it. I'm not on someone's side. I don't care, right? My point in saying all of this is that at a fundamental level, there is a huge disconnect between the alignment, what used to be a fun game was a good game, and a fun game that was a good game, got more attention and more sales. And now it's the case that basically the most addictive game, the game with the most loot boxes, the game that's the most live servicey, yada, 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 that's the one that makes the most money. And so that is the one that the companies are all trying to make. They don't care if it's fun. They don't. And if you're a gamer who plays games because games are fun, well, you're screwed. But the good news is there's thousands and thousands of old games that you can go play and that are still fun. And you know what's crazy? A game doesn't have to be super complicated. A game doesn't have to be the most graphically intense to actually be fun. It can be like a small, stupid game with cheesy graphics, from like 1984 and still be fun. For example, if you've ever heard of the Pico 8, I've been recently making and playing games with the Pico 8, and I made this little guy. It's called Walk to the Spot. You walk to the spot. That's it. Try and get the highest score you can. Gets a little crazier. Game over. Sorry. Here's the thing. I'm not saying that's the greatest game ever. What I'm saying is games used to be designed like that, where you could sit down and play it and have fun. And games can still be designed that way. But if you've ever wondered why modern games suck, it's because they're no longer designed to be fun. Some are, but most of them aren't. And, that's the problem. So I guess now we know.